to be honest with you, I don't like working with celebrities, right? And it's not because, they're out of touch, right? The challenge is if you give someone too much money and too much fame, it acts like tar to their consciousness. And so they're not really interested in becoming more conscious and adding great value to everybody else's life. They're really just sort of focused on their own sense of self. And I like working with people who want to make a difference in the world.
Hi friends, this is Read and Write with Natasha podcast. My name is Natasha Tynes and I'm an author and a journalist. In this channel, I talk about the writing life, review books, and interview authors. Hope you enjoy the journey. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. I have with me today author Christopher Lee Maher, who's a former Navy SEAL turned wellness expert who transformed the intense stress of his early life and military service into a powerful healing mission. Drawing from years of personal experience, study, and deep self-work, Christopher developed True Body Intelligence, a holistic system designed to bring lasting freedom and balance to the mind, body, and spirit. In his book, Free for Life, A Navy SEAL's Path to Inner Freedom and Outer Peace, Christopher shares this groundbreaking approach. All right, Christopher, so nice to meet you, and thank you for joining me today on the podcast. And thank you for your service. Being a Navy SEAL is not for the faint of heart. From my understanding, it's like very few people in the world who can accomplish this. So it's a huge accomplishment. So, Christopher, can you tell me a bit about your book? And what do people benefit from reading the life of and the philosophy of U.S. Navy SEAL?
Yeah, I think what I say about my book, it's an interesting question. When you look at the philosophy, you're going to get into that in the second phase of the book. And then the first phase of the book is more of a biographical story. I picked sort of bits and pieces to support the philosophy. And the end of the book is really about the systems that we use. So as it relates to Navy SEALs, we've been known to have an unrelenting willfulness. We've been known to have an unrelenting willfulness. And so I felt like I had a fiduciary responsibility to be able to at least let people know who were seeking true transformation from the things that they're struggling with, that there's another way of going about it. Because without knowledge, it makes it very difficult for people to take heartfelt action to their own benefit. And when I got into this, like anyone, I think, who's in pain, who do you turn to in order to find resolution? And the path that made most sense for me was traditional medicine and holistic medicine and Chinese medicine. Allopathic medicine, I had very few experiences where I got resolution for the challenges that I was dealing with. And so ethically, morally, principally, and in terms of my set of values, it just didn't make sense. And so in the holistic world and in traditional medicine, I found that they had some solutions, but they were only ever going to deal with the surface issues going on. They were never, ever going to reach deep enough into the surplus of tension and stress and emotional and psychological distortion that I was dealing with. And so I set myself out on a path to begin to reverse engineer so that I could understand how I went from feeling great on Monday to feeling terrible on Wednesday, which never really made any sense to me. And so, Free for Life, a U.S. Navy SEAL's Path to Inner Freedom is a book to help people understand that no matter what challenge that they're dealing with, they have to be able to, at the very least, understand the algorithm for disease and the algorithm for wellness. And so I sought out to begin to initially solve my problems so that I could get back into achieving and focus on my ambitions. And in the end, what I found out is that my ambitions were the things that were causing me the pain that I was living with in the first place. And so I needed to hold up the mirror and look at what were the reasons why I was focused in these directions and what was missing in my childhood that caused me to seek outer recognition versus inner redemption.
So why did you decide to become a Navy SEAL in the first place? How did that journey happen?
Oh, because I was looking for a challenge. I wanted something challenging. And from what I read and what I researched about it, when I looked at that organization, I thought, okay, they're going to be able to challenge me. They're going to push me to my edge.
And how was the training? Well, you know, I hear some horror stories, and I'm just curious to see how, because very few people actually make it, from my understanding. Like many of them quit.
Yeah. The attrition rate is about 92 to 93%.
Yeah.
So that means for every 100 people that show up, 6.5 to 7 or 7.5 to 7 to 6.5 guys are going to graduate.
Yeah.
So training for me was interesting in the sense that everything was pretty much easy except the cold water because I was so lean.
Okay.
Right. And they sent me up to UCSD to be hydrostatically tested because I had hypothermia so often. And it came back that I had 1.8% body fat. And they continued to keep doing the test again because they couldn't figure out how that could be true. And they realized I didn't have any fat around my organs.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I was super lean. What I liked was the camaraderie. Like, you know, we're racing all day. We're challenging our bodies physically. We're challenging ourselves emotionally. We're in the classroom, we're being challenged psychologically. And every day and every week, I was getting stronger. I was getting stronger physically. I was getting stronger mentally. I was getting stronger emotionally. My energy was more abundant. And so I continued to grow through the program. And then, you know, they pushed into the areas where I had inner deficiencies and insecurities, and I had to figure out how to overcome those. And I did, and I graduated.
What was the most challenging part for you? Was the water? Was
the cold water. Was the cold water.
And how did you overcome it?
How did I overcome it? I got lucky. Actually, I got pushed into what's called a summer class versus a winter class. And in the summer class, the water's warmer.
Okay.
Right. So for the classes that go through SEAL training in the winter time, you know, the difference between 54 degrees and 55 degrees in water temperature versus 63 on you physiologically changes everything. And so for someone who's really lean, it's much better to be in a summer class. And it's way, it's harder in the sense that you're always hot when you're on land. But when you're in water, you're not too excessively cold, right? The winter classes have the benefit of like when you're doing all your PT, which is called, you know, physical exercise or physical training. When you're on land in the wintertime, it's a lot easier because you're not hot.
Yeah.
Right. It's you're on the ocean front, the wind is blowing. It's easier. And I started out in a winter class. And so when we were doing all those long swims, I was in really, really cold water. And I was going into what's called a stupor. And so as your core temperature drops, and mine's dropped down during Hell Week, I think my core temperature dropped down to 87.6 degrees. And so you can imagine 98.6 is where you want to live, right? And so if you go 5 degrees too high, right? So if you get a 205, you're basically dead, okay?
Yeah.
So imagine going 10 degrees in the opposite or 11 degrees in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Towards cold. So I ended up with ventricular fibrillation. I was hospitalized.
Oh, wow. And in terms of the mental toughness,
yes,
what did you use to tell yourself to overcome this? Hey, quick break before we dive back in. If you've been thinking about writing your book but do not know where to start, my Write Your Book in 120 Days coaching program can help. It's a step by step system that takes you from idea to finished manuscript with structure, accountability, and personalized feedback every step of the way. You can learn more about the program at natashatynes.com/book coaching. That's natashatynes.com/book coaching. And if you're ready to talk about your project, you can book a free clarity call with me. The link is in the show notes. All right, back to the episode.
I think when I got to a point where I was so cold, there was no thinking at all.
Okay.
You're just getting to the next moment. Like, I've always had a well-defined, strong ego, and I had a mother who was very difficult as a child. And so when you have a lot of childhood stress and childhood trauma, it sort of makes you mentally and emotionally resilient. And so from that point of view, SEAL training was not that difficult for me from a mental perspective. It was really from a physiological perspective. I mean, at a physiological level, I was a superior athlete. So digging down deep and working hard, I didn't mind any of that. It was literally the cold that made the biggest difference for me.
So how did you so the message that you send in the book is how to heal yourself, and how does your Navy training play into your message?
Yeah, it's great. So that's a really good question. So when I decided that I was going to begin to figure this out, I started reaching out to people. And one of my buddies came over to my house and he brought a yoga mat and a juicer. And, he was doing yoga at the time. And he was showing me all these different positions. And he made me this sort of like very nasty tasting juice, which was all healthy stuff, right? And in that moment, I realized that I was fit, but I was toxic. And he was fit and he was healthy. And I was the opposite of that. And so when you start to address your limiting beliefs in the way in which you're moving through the world, you have to be able to pull people towards you who will help you. So when I would pray at night, I would just ask for the next person who could help me learn the next thing that I needed to learn. And sure enough, the next person would arrive. So, this was this was a 9-year process. And I got to the place where I applied everything that I learned in SEAL training and in SEAL teams and everything I learned in boarding school to be able to figure out what was really important. And that is, anytime that you have a problem, you must address it from all sides. And so that's what I did. So I was detoxing, I was fasting, I was juicing, I was stretching, I was in the sauna, I was sweating, I was doing everything you could to clean out the body. I set up my bedroom so it was a dark room, so there was 0 photons of light entering to my bedroom. So I was sleeping in absolute darkness at night. And I just, with all the combinations of things that I did and my commitment to removing stress, to removing toxicity, to reducing tension, to reducing distortion, it paid off. Because what happened is my vision, it came back. What happened is my hearing, it came back. What happened is my sleep came back. So instead of getting up and urinating 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times a night, I was sleeping through the night.
You say your vision and your hearing came back. What does that mean?
Well, what that means is the first thing that I experienced was pain in my joints. And then the second thing that I experienced was insomnia. And the third thing I experienced was a reduction in my sense organs.
And when did that happen?
That all started showing up at 29, 30, and 31.
And you were done with the Navy SEAL, or you were still a Navy SEAL?
Yeah. I got out of the SEAL teams when I was 27.
And then you started exhibiting these weird symptoms.
Yes. And then I started exhibiting these weird symptoms, which didn't make any sense to me. Because if you looked at me in a mirror, I looked like Adonis.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you look like, no, you look very fit and healthy.
Okay. And so, and imagine this is in 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001. So the book is about what I did in order to be able to bring myself back into balance and achieve a high state of homeostasis.
What caused these weird symptoms for like a young, fit guy? What caused it?
Yeah, what's very interesting enough, it was the cold water from SEAL training.
Ah,
See, what happens is when you start to study traditional medicine and Chinese medicine, you start to understand that there's two organs. And the first organ is the spleen and the kidney, and they abhor the cold. And what that means is that they don't like the cold. And so when you have too much cold in your kidneys, they get into what's called an excessive contractive state. And you put too much cold in your spleen, and your spleen gets into an excessive contractive state. And so the muscles that were extremely short in my body were the iliacus and my medial hamstrings. And so they were causing me a lot of structural issues, but they were also causing me a lot of physiological issues because you can only put the body in extreme situations every so often. And if you put it in too often, guess what's going to happen? It's going to cause some serious problems. Like when you look at someone who's really well, they have a great balance between cool and warm going on in their body. But when you deal with hot or cold or freezing or boiling, then you're putting your body in terms of your sense organ and your physiology in a very extreme state of function. And I spent all that time in cold water, but I never spent any time in hot water. And so I never balanced out all the cold water that went into my body. And we're talking about thousands of hours. Thousands of hours. And sometimes we would be in the ocean for 3 and 4 hours at a time.
And why didn't you seek traditional medicine for your ailments?
Yeah, because when I was going through SEAL training, all the pain that I had in my body, all they would give me was Motrin, which was basically a numbing agent, and it caused me a lot of stomach issues. And so I didn't have a whole lot of faith. And all of the vaccines that I was getting when I was in the military, they were causing me like a lot of problems. I was like stuffy and sick all the time. And the second I got out of the military and I stopped doing any of that, I wasn't taking Motrin anymore. I wasn't getting any more vaccines in my body. I never, ever was sick again. And so I decided to just go cold turkey and let my body deal with things. And I remember as a child, whenever I was getting too hot, if I laid on a cold floor, I always felt better. And so I immediately had a recognition that temperature plays a part in the way that we feel.
So what is the main message that you want to send in the book when it comes to healing both physically and mentally? What is your main mission statement?
Yeah, the main mission statement is whatever's in your body is in your life.
Okay.
And what that means is all the excessive tension and stress and distortion that you've collected over your lifetime is going to eventually put you in a state of dis-ease or a state of disease, whether you're allopathically focused or holistically traditionally focused. And if you want to get into wellness, you have to reduce your tension in your muscles and your fascia, your stress in your nervous system, and your exhaustion in your brain and your body. And if you can systematically begin to reduce the excessive stress, tension, distortion, and toxicity, you can move into a high state of homeostasis really quickly.
And what is the blueprint for achieving that?
The blueprint of achieving that is there's a system that I call Bestersize.
Okay.
And Bestersize stands for bioenergetic self-transformational sequences. What that means is you're getting into different positions. And while you're in a position, you're utilizing 3 forms of contraction: isometric, concentric, and eccentric contractions in order to strengthen, to recruit, and to stretch the muscles and the fascia in your body so that you can lengthen and allow the body to come back to a natural state of function. Because what's very interesting is when your mind is stressed, your nervous system and your body's stressed. When your body's stressed, your nervous system and your mind are stressed. And so what you do to one affects the other. And so the fastest way to reduce fear and mental anxiety and anger and self-righteousness is to go into the body and to reduce the excessive amount of tension and stress. So when you look at psychological and emotional distortion, if you look at anxiety, you would call that emotional distortion, right? If you look at fear, you would call that psychological distortion. So what is in between distortion and stress? Well, there's tension. Well, guess what happens? If you reduce the tension, you automatically reduce and eliminate the distortion, and you automatically reduce and eliminate the stress. And so it's very simple. When you see any animal in the wild get up from laying down for long periods of time, what's the first thing that they do? They contract their muscles and they lengthen their muscles simultaneously, and then they go about their day. Humans very rarely do that. They're sitting in positions for long periods of time, same position that you and I are sitting in. You know, I might be in this position 4 or 5 hours a day, but at some point in the day, I'm going to go into my healing room, the healing lab, and I'm going to start taking the tension and stress that I put in my body that day. And if I don't do that, that tension and that stress from today is going to make its way into Friday. And if I don't do that on Friday, Thursday and Friday's tension and stress is going to make it into Saturday. And then eventually that accumulation of stress is going to be what you term your lifetime accumulated stress load. And that stress load will eventually cause you a high state of dis-ease, whether it's a headache, whether it's menstrual cramps, whether it's a poor night's sleep, whether it's backache, neck ache, hip ache, knee pain, shoulder pain. It's going to catch up to you. And at some point you have to face the music, and you have to put in the time, the energy, and the effort, and put time aside in your day to remove what you've accumulated over the last 37, 38, 45 years. And if you refuse to do that, your symptomology is going to become more dramatic.
And how do you remove that?
Through Bestersides, bioenergetic self-transformational sequences.
And where does exercise fit in the equation?
Yeah, the challenge with modern day exercise is that it only usually typically addresses one form of contraction, right? So if you go to a Pilates class, you go to yoga class, they're dealing with what you would call lengthability, not flexibility. Flexibility is different because flex of a muscle means to shorten the muscle. It doesn't mean to lengthen the muscle. Well, they're dealing with what are called isometric contractions, right? If you look and you go to the gym and you're running and you're lifting weights, you're primarily using what are called concentric contractions. But hardly anyone outside of power lifters that train for the Olympic trials and the Olympics, they're the rare person that uses what's called an eccentric contraction. And so when you look at the demographics around how humans use exercise to move, the problem is the one contraction that they're attracted to most will cause the other aspects of their body to go out of balance. So if I do passive isometric lengthening exercises like yoga all the time, what will happen is my connective tissue will get long, but the belly of my muscle will get short.
What if you do like HIIT exercises where you do like small sprints of like the gym that I go to, we do like, it's pretty much HIIT where we do running, rowing, and body weight and weights, regular weights. You don't think that covers?
Yeah, they're covering concentric contractions, but you're not doing eccentric contractions actively, okay? And you're not doing isometric contractions. Well, it would be very easy. What you do is, let's say you're at the gym and you're lifting weights. When you let the weight back down, you make sure you're adding 30 to 50% more weight because the eccentric contraction is 30 to 50% stronger. What that means is, as a contextual example, is if I can lift 100 pounds one time, I can lower 150 pounds with the same level of ease.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you're at, so now you've got a tire that you're lifting up at your HIIT class, or let's say you're squatting. Okay.
Okay.
So during your squat, during the lowering phase, you would have to lower 150 pounds. On the lifting phase, you would lift 100 pounds. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
But what happens is people don't do that.
Mm.
They lift, they lower and lift the same weight. And so that means you're only affecting the body concentrically.
Mm-hmm.
You need the eccentric contractions to stretch and lengthen the muscles.
I see.
And when they stretch and they lengthen, they remove the stress that you've accumulated over that day. And so you have, let's say there's 3 pieces to this pie, you're only focused on one of them.
I see.
Well, if you only focus on one of those pieces of pie, what's going to happen to the other 2? They're going to become distorted. And so now you become concentrically strong, but isometrically and eccentrically weak.
And so what do you do day to day? I know you're an author, but like, are you like a wellness consultant, or how do you?
Yeah. I'm a wellness one-on-one consultant. And then I teach people my method. So I have a 5-day process that I take people through called rational intimate transfiguration. And I radically change their reality, because through the systems that I've been developing for the last 25 years, I have the ability to help them transcend 50% of the stress and tension and distortion they've accumulated over their lifetime within 5 days. So imagine what that would do to you.
And where do you find the people? Where do you find the clients? Do you go to like the gym?
I don't find anyone.
They find you?
I don't find anyone. They find me.
How? How? Online or?
I don't even know how, and I never ask. I just get an email or a text that says, "Hey, my name is Susan. I heard about you, and I'm dealing with this, and this. I read your book, and we have a phone call." And I say, "Yeah."
And you do it online via Zoom, the training?
No, I do everything in person.
So you go to what if they're like in a different state, or?
They have to fly to me.
Where are you based?
I'm in Los Angeles.
So do you work with celebrities?
Yeah, I did. But to be honest with you, I don't like working with celebrities.
Okay.
Right. And it's not because, they're out of touch. Right. The challenge is if you give someone too much money and too much fame, it acts like tar to their consciousness. And so they're not really interested in becoming more conscious and adding great value to everybody else's life. They're really just sort of focused on their own sense of self. And I like working with people who want to make a difference in the world, not just for themselves. Because let's say I work on 75 people a year, right? Say I work with 75 people a year. I work with 100 people a year, and I'm going to work for another 20 years, right? That's not very many people that I can affect. So I want to make sure that I'm working with people that we share a similar ethic and we have the same value system.
But LA is a great place for that. No, I mean, it's a big wellness, and there's a lot of like wellness awareness in LA. So, I mean, you're like at a very strategic location.
But most of my people that I see, they don't live in Los Angeles.
They fly to you?
Yeah. Almost everybody flies from somewhere in Europe, somewhere in South America, or somewhere here in the US. I hardly ever work with someone in Los Angeles. It's very, very rare.
You don't fly to them?
If they have the resources, sure.
And are there people who criticize your method?
You mean people I've worked with that didn't get the result that they wanted?
No, in general, or people online, commenting on your book or commenting on your program. And what are their objections?
I think for people, it'd be very difficult a lot of time to accept the claims that I make.
Yeah.
About the work that I do, because to them, it would seem way too fantastical. But to be honest with you, in terms of transformation, I'm the world's foremost authority by far. By far. People don't understand the implicate order true transformation. And I do. I did the hard, deep work. I spent 100,000 hours, literally 100,000 hours focused on understanding the implicate order of true transformation.
And the transformation is both a physical transformation and a mental transformation.
Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I mean by that, when you look at the body, you have to understand it breaks down into 4 separate worlds. Physical, which means it's kinesthetic and instinctual, emotional, which means it is breath focused and feeling focused, spiritual, which means that it's energetic focused, and mental, which means that it's thought focused and behavioral focused. And so when you work with someone from True Body Intelligence, and we go through the rational intimate transfiguration process, we have to work with all parts of you. We have to work with you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually if we're going to create instantaneous permanent change. And I can create instantaneous permanent change in any one of those worlds because I understand the implicate order of what's necessary in order to create long life lasting change. And the beautiful thing is I teach you then how to do it to yourself. So you're never relying on me, and we can have an interdependent relationship rather than the codependent dependent relationship you see, rather than the codependent dependent relationship that you see in the modern world between patients and practitioners.
Okay, so I want to ask a bit about your publishing journey. How did you publish the book? Did you find a publisher or did you self-publish?
I self-published.
Okay, and why is that?
Because I didn't want anyone telling me what I could say or couldn't say, what was acceptable and what was unacceptable.
Okay, and how is the book selling?
How's the book selling? I mean, what most authors sell less than, I think, 1,000 books, right?
Yeah.
And I think I've sold tens of thousands of books.
How did you manage to do that? What was your marketing strategy?
What was my marketing strategy? My marketing strategy initially was to reach out to all my friends and family and let them know that, hey, this is what I've completed. My second strategy was to help co-create a miracle every day in someone's life. And then my other strategy was I was going to podcast for 3 to 5 years straight, at least 50 to 100 podcasts a year, and share the information.
And what was the thing that moved the needle the most in terms of book sales?
To be honest with you, I don't even know, because I'm so focused on sharing. I think the thing that motivated me the most was I saw this video of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he said, if you think that you've created something of value for humanity, you should shout off of the top of every mountain. And so my strategy is very simple. Each day that I have an opportunity to be in front of someone, I share with them and I try to motivate them to take better care of themselves. And I think that over time, you start seeping deeper into the culture. And then people tell someone who told someone who told someone who told someone, and you just start to spread out slowly. And for me, I'm going to be doing this for the next, foreseeable future, right? So I know what my passion is. I know what my purpose is. I'm 25 years in, and I'm going to be doing this for at least the next 5 years. And I just think slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah. Do you have any plans for more books?
I will be producing some more books. Like I've written 7 workbooks. I'll be writing my 8th workbook soon. And those are just for my practitioners. So my practitioners are people who I teach the True Body Intelligence methods to.
So how does your day-to-day look like?
What does my day look like? It looks like I wake up and I hit the sauna. I have the infrared dry sauna, and then, I meditate for at least 20 minutes to 30 minutes to 40 minutes every day.
Okay.
I hit my sauna for at least 20 to 30 minutes. I do my best exercises for 15 to 20 minutes each day. Sometimes I'm doing them for 4 or 5 hours a day, right? Depending on the situation that I'm in. But an average day, I'm putting in at least 90 minutes between dry sauna, my best exercises, and meditation, right? And then I spend the rest of my time either podcasting, focused on sports, which my team is the Philadelphia Eagles, go Birds. And then I spend the rest of that time helping other people.
So by podcasting, you appear on other people's podcasts, or do you run your own podcast?
Yeah, I appear on other people's podcasts, and I did my own podcast. I did 20 episodes to explain the implicate order of true transformational experience. Because I felt like even if I die, someone comes along and finds those podcasts and they follow them through, they'll be able to take notes and write down and understand what's the implicate order to true transformation. And I felt like that was a responsibility that I had to humanity. And so the next level podcasting that I'm going to do is when I invite people to come into Los Angeles and sit with me for a couple hours and we get into some interesting subject matter.
Maybe Joe Rogan would invite you and you would guys be talking about your method. That would be something.
Yeah, that would be great.
And okay, let me think. So what does the future hold for you, Christopher?
What does the future hold for me? The future holds for me greater opportunities to share my wisdom, to share my experiences, to share my love with those who are desiring to experience greater states of consciousness and emotional freedom.
I love it. Any final words you'd like to say before you conclude? How can people get in touch with you, buy your book, if they want to hire you as well? How can they find you?
Yeah, how they find me. The easiest way to find me is truebodyintelligence.com. So at least when you go there, you can start to get sort of like a cryptic understanding of the things that I do, because I'm so outside of the box of what normality is. There you can buy the book. That's super, super simple. And there I have a course called 8 Stepping Stones to Inner Freedom. If you really want to dig into your stuff and sort of shed it and move on at an energetic, psychological, emotional level. And then, I have music. I wrote an album called Heart and Soul. So I'm a musician. I think go to truebodyintelligence.com. If you want daily inspiration, you can punch my name into Instagram, Christopher Lee Maher, Maher, and, get a little inspiration 2 or 3 times a week.
I will do that for sure. So Christopher, thank you very much for this very enlightening conversation. And there's a lot to learn from this. And for anybody who's watching or listening, please make sure to check out Christopher's book. And the name of the book again is Free for Life, Navy SEAL's Path to Inner Freedom and Outer Peace. It's available on Amazon. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. And until we meet again. Thank you for tuning in to Read and Write with Natasha. I'm your host, Natasha Tynes. If today's episode inspired you in any way, please take the time to review the podcast. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast with fellow book lovers. Until next time, happy reading, happy writing. Hey, just a quick pause to share something I'm really excited about. My new novel, Karma Unleashed, is finally out. It's a supernatural suburban thriller set between the Middle East and the American suburbs, weaving together themes of identity, immigration, and mystical visions. If you love stories with heart, mystery, and a touch of the mystical world, this one is for you. You can grab your copy now. Just search Karma Unleashed by Natasha Tynes on Amazon. And of course, the link is in the show notes. Thanks for supporting indie authors like me.